So the title sounds really important and hectic, but it's actually just a lot of fun. You can't be too like uptight about everything. Obviously, it's not like a thing where you're in school where you have to make sure all the staff are doing their job, like they're on time, doing what they need to do. It's actually a bit more chilled. You got to create a vibe. You got to be, chilled with the bar staff. Make sure the environment's cool. Obviously, the stock and money flow and all of that stuff is important, and to make sure that everything runs smoothly, that's important. But you also got to enjoy yourself, because I personally don't like uptight teachers and so on. But you got to just be cool, be chilled. And people quite often, I don't want to talk about myself, but people get the wrong impression and they think that too tense, never smiling and all of that. But you got to try and bring some kind of seriousness to the job. Because if you walk around acting all chilled and super happy and a little bit weird, like I can be, it just doesn't give your title the seriousness that like it's so-called applies to the title as a bar manager. It's a great question, because obviously with our great pandemic we've just established now called COVID-19, that's changed quite a lot. I think I speak for not just myself or South Africa, but pretty much the rest of the world. Basically I still wake up really early. Most people think that, because you're on lockdown and whatever, you sleep till God knows what time. But I still wake up at 6 in the morning, have coffee, obviously try and exercise every day. We're all naughty, so we don't all exercise every single day and run like we're supposed to. But I try it every day, because with us staying at home most of the time, we basically tend to eat a lot and all of that, and we get lazy. So basically trying to not be lazy, trying to stay positive. In normality, obviously, wake up in the morning, exercise. I rather enjoy exercising. Obviously, I love football. Can't play football as much with work and all of that at hand. And just basically get into work and basically work. Outside of lockdown, obviously, with the industry we're in, it seems pretty chilled and uncomplicated, but you got a lot of things you got to handle, like stock takes, and basically an establishment like Crusaders is not very as simple as it seems. There's a lot of like hard work and a lot of thought that goes into everything that happens. There's a lot of people who are part of it, but it takes quite a lot of work and effort. And before lockdown, obviously you'd be going to bed at unearthly hours. During lockdown now, it's been quite hard in the beginning, because I'd be at home at times I'd normally be at work, and I'd be sitting up at like 12 o'clock, still sitting up hyper, not knowing what to do. And then I'd basically be going to bed at times I'd normally be getting home. So that's our great lockdown. That's definitely had its toll there. The great question we all have on our minds. To be very honest with you, allegedly, it was said that it would be on level 1 with restrictions. But obviously, with everything changing all the time and with the cases going up and down and all the fake news we get, we don't know when we're actually going to open, to be very honest. The interesting thing about that question is pretty much almost immediately. I think that a lot of people started panicking because no one knew what was going on. I believe we still live in a world where we are thinking about the unknown, because no one actually knows what the virus is and so forth. I'm not going to speak too much about the virus itself, because I mean, it has enough coverage as it is. But yeah, almost immediately, I mean, we actually, for example, at the club where we're at Crusaders, almost immediately we actually had our rugby season starting, and we had flower tournaments and all that starting. And we noticed that normally we have packed crowds, whereas with the semi-finals that we had, the following week was going to be the final, which didn't happen due to COVID-19. But with the semi-finals, we noticed the numbers were not as great as they normally would be, because I think a lot of people started panicking. We were basically living to the unknown, so we didn't actually know what we were dealing with, and we just adhered to all the rules and regulations that we were given. So when the announcement was made, we were obviously given half a week, you could say Monday to the Thursday, to trade, and we abided by the laws and the restrictions. Obviously 50 people max, 3 to 6 o'clock were the trading hours, and it was amazing to see how much lockdown was going to mean to people, because people pretty much just came out in numbers. Obviously no more than 50, but it was good to see, because it just shows you that people knew lockdown was coming. And I think as much as the fact that people like their alcohol and like drinking, I think it was more for the support of the club and the industry as well. Because yes, people knew that they were going to be on lockdown, but I think they also wanted to support the club. And yeah, I kind of know that firsthand because of the conversations I had with people, particularly on the last day. I think it was March the 26th, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of people were very sad. So we basically abided by the rules and regulations pretty much immediately. We had our sanitation, as we obviously need to sanitize. We took a list of the number of people, we had names and all of that for the people who were coming in and out, and social distancing was obviously already displayed back then. I think not just for me, my colleagues and the patrons, I think obviously for the whole world. I'm not going to really speak about them now, but it's been quite humbling. I think humbling is pretty much, it's a strong word. I think it makes more sense as to how everyone's gone through everything. Because going from working and going into a routine that we all go through every day to suddenly just having no routine, having to stay at home, it was quite humbling. Obviously, a lot of people have lost jobs. Some of us have obviously had to suffer pay cuts, and other people have obviously had to turn to the UIF, which is also quite a mission, because you basically don't know where your ends meet is coming from. You don't know how much you're going to be receiving. You don't know, and it's quite hard for people to live from month to month. So in our industry, for example, my colleagues as the bar staff, not only the bar staff, actually the bar staff, the cleaners, the bar backs, ground staff, pretty much everyone, you living from month to month, so the bar staff work on tips and so on, and then they get their monthly salaries. It's pretty hard to suddenly not have a month to month. You basically now have lockdown, which is 3 months, and you don't know when that's going to end. So the great thing that I did learn about this industry though during lockdown is it's quite an important industry, because you are very much relied upon, because everyone likes alcohol and people like entertainment and nightlife in Durban, not only Durban, Joburg as well, and Cape Town and South Africa, the world as a whole. But yeah, it's quite big in Durban. And with a place like Crusaders, it's pretty much, it's on the map. I think it was quite tragic because we were starting to get quite exclusive after the World Cup and all of that. And to suddenly just close down before our rugby season, which is quite a big time in the year, is quite tragic. But like they say, we could come through this eventually. Only time will tell, I suppose. It's been really hard and stressful not knowing what the outcome will be. I mean, it's the unknown once again, basically, with obviously my colleagues, not everyone obviously qualifies for UIF and, government benefits. The pandemic has been quite crucial to the entertainment sector and the hospitality sector as a whole. In terms of, it's obviously limited it. So as we all know, hospitality and the entertainment industry basically thrive regardless of where you are in the world and the country, and it just thrives on socialism and entertainment and people just pretty much getting together and having a jaw. And now you don't have that at all. You're not even limited. You're not allowed to go to restaurants. You're not allowed to go to clubs. You can't go and have a jaw. You can't go to parties, and people basically thrive on entertainment. And I mean, if you use our industry, for example, or our establishment, where I reside from, is people would come through every day after work just to have like a chill down during the week, for example. And that was basically their routine. And without that, imagine going straight home now, you sort of feel lost and you feel incomplete, because now you're going from work, if you're even at work. If you're at home, you just point blank at home and you have nothing to look forward to in terms of that. Whereas if you at work, you're going from work to home and your routine's cut dry. Whereas on a Friday night, we'd have things like, happy hour, people get festive. I'm just using Durban as an example. You'd have Florida Road, you'd have Umhlanga. People, it's just like a casual thing from a young age. You'd start off with the steak and ale or the George, either one of the two. You'd then go to Ghazi until endless hours of the night, and then we'd all end up at Raffles. The famous line is, we're not going to Raffles, and we always end up there. That's just a good example I can think of. Even if you go out of Durban, you go to places like Joburg, you have Truth, you have Nikki Beach, Long Street in Cape Town. I'm just going to throw some names out there, but I feel like it just has hit the industry quite hard. I feel like entertainment and hospitality can go quite well together, because it just leaves everyone in the same position where you basically have to literally stay home and you can't thrive like you wanted to thrive. It also affects a lot of people's ways of living, because you need to try and sustain your sanity, and I feel like a lot of people have slowly lost that. Thank goodness I lost my sanity before lockdown. But yeah, it's quite hectic how people have to be taken apart from their friendships and their social circles. And even if you really, you Zoom and you keep in touch via social media and all of the platforms that are available for you to do so, it's just never going to be the same. So we basically have been taken out of our normal routines where we were used to. We know the weekend's coming and we know we're going to hang out with our friends. We now cannot do that the way we wanted to do. We always joke about it, but now you literally are with Club Duvet and DJ Pillow. To be very honest, there's been a few WhatsApp messages here and there, a phone call here and there with people that I'm acquainted with and people who are part of the industry, or just as you mentioned, the patrons mainly. And I feel like a lot of people are feeling quite lost. They miss the normal, side of life for them. So what I mean by the normal side of life for them would be, for example, now you're allowed to consume liquor, but it's a lot more entertaining to go and consume liquor outside of your home. And I think a lot of people miss that, and people miss just the concept of socializing with their friends outside of the comfort of their homes, essentially. So I get quite a lot of WhatsApps every now and then where people are asking, when are you going to open? Like, when is this happening? When can we get alcohol? It's quite tough, because the honest truth is not even I know. The short-term and long-term plans for the establishment at the moment, obviously the club thrives on sports, hence the term sports club. It also thrives on socializing, but due to the fact that obviously due to lockdown laws, you're not allowed social gatherings, there will be no sport for the time being, and we're also not allowed to trade and sell alcohol. So our short-term plan for the meantime is we have a little coffee shop running on the field. That obviously is there to trade and provide for those who are going for their exercising throughout the day. We also, right next to that, we have what essentially was our gin bar is now called our cool drink bar. We're basically providing chips and some sweets and cool drinks, water, as well as Powerades for those who are obviously exercising. And the chips is more essentially for the kiddies who come along. In terms of the long-term goals, it's very hard to say at the moment because there's a lot of uncertainty around that topic, as we ourselves don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, for starters. So we can't really plan for that, and nobody knows when the regulations are going to be sort of relaxed. So until that point comes to light, we're on level 3 at the moment. Until we get to level 2, we can start looking forward to what could happen next, as well as level 1, and then essentially no lockdown. But until we've moved from level 3, I feel like as a whole we can't really plan for that as yet. There is numerous quotes and words you could use for this answer, but seeing as though you asked for 3, normally I'd go on and ramble about thousands of words, but that's just me. Expect the unexpected. Those are the best 3 words I can think of. I think we all hope that there won't be an increase and an influx in prices, but I feel like that all determines or depends rather on what the regulations are going to be once we get back to what we essentially feel is normality. Because if we have situations where we're going to have less staff or less people entering certain industries or restaurants or nightclubs or whatever it may be, because you have to have social distancing, I feel like a lot of places are going to have to up their prices to basically make up for, I wouldn't say lost time, but to make up for your profits going forward. Because COVID-19, even when we get to no lockdown, we're still going to be stuck in what we'd call a development phase, which would be going forward. Not just in our industry, but in all industries as a whole. It's more of developing and rebuilding our economy. And we're only going to be able to do that if we up the prices, unfortunately. There's going to be a lot of people who, are going through trying times, as we all are. And affordability is going to be quite crucial. But I think that we will be able to, as a country as a whole, we'll be able to find some form of solution just to get our economy rocking again. I think it'd be very optimistic to think that we'd go back to normal, because I feel like that is just being over optimistic. It would be great, but it's just not going to be the way it's going to be, unfortunately. How I see the nightlife and just like, the hospitality industry in general, I think it's more of a thing where you're just going to have to, once again, I feel like regulations and the government, so to speak, play a big part in this, because we don't know what's going to be allowed and what's not going to be allowed. But for example, if you take like a nightclub, for example, you can't essentially go and park your car outside a nightclub and, party to the music that's being played in a nightclub, where there has been talk that I've seen on, news platforms and social media where, food industries, for example, are going to go back to the olden day roadhouse vibe, where you're going to be able to park your car and, eat from within your car, where you are then experiencing social distancing and hygiene and sanitation and all of the formats above. It's the same as with cinema. I've seen articles, once again, I quote, where people would be going into a whole situation where you're going to be going to drive-in cinemas once again. So it will be very interesting to see how you would go about the hospitality industry. For example, a club like Crusaders, would you go and experience something like our Soul Sundays? Would you go and park your car on the field and have maybe a live stage and like a band up there? Obviously the instruments and so on will be on display, but same as alcohol, it's going to be very interesting to see. Maybe you'll have to sit in your car and get a beer delivered to your car, or like a tray of shooters delivered to you and your mates in the car. So it's very, very interesting to say. I think that's very futuristic, so to speak. I don't think that would really happen, but it's going to be hard. What I really do think, though, just to touch on that point, is I think that we will probably go back to restrictions, and we'll have to work it from there. It's interesting that you bring up that point. We actually, after much talk and negotiation, we've actually, as I mentioned, with our industry being closed, we've actually started what you'd call a relief fund, but it's more of an internal relief fund, which we've made at the club itself, where you could obviously donate. You can also donate via Zappa, which I think is very new age. It's quite modernized, and it helps everyone to donate, basically. What this fund is for is it's essentially for our bar staff. So because they've been at home and they actually have been earning nothing for the last 2 to 3 months because of lockdown, this fund is basically there to sort of help them out as well. As I mentioned previously with other questions, a lot of people throughout the world are suffering. A lot of people don't have jobs and so forth, but with our bar staff, a lot of them are actually students. They're quite young, and they basically bartend and so forth just to make, extra money for their studies, just to make ends meet, and it's a month-to-month business. So without the tips, for starters, let's take their salaries out of the way. Without the tips, they are obviously running dry, and this fund is basically there to not only show your appreciation to the club itself. I mean, everyone loves Crusaders and everyone loves the industry as a whole. I think the industry as a whole is suffering quite a bit, but our fund that we've made is basically just to try and help out our staff. What I mean by that is it doesn't essentially mean that you need to donate R1 million or we need to find a millionaire out there. If you want to donate R1, let's even go lower. I don't think you can zap a 50 cents. But let's go to R1. If you can donate R1, 100 people donating R1 essentially adds up to 100 Rand. And, like they say, every cent counts. And at the end of the day, in our sense, this fund gets paid out at the end of every month. And I've seen a lot of establishments within the industry starting their own funds. And I personally hope that they're working. What I mean by working is the funds are working because I believe that this is quite a crucial time on the industry itself, with entertainment, with artists, with DJs, with hospitality, and all the above. I think that everybody needs to sort of add their 2 cents to try and help those who are in need. And I think it would be the same if it were the other way around, if the roles were reversed and other industries were closed and hospitality and the entertainment industry was open. I think that the industry we are in would actually help out those who are not open. So I think it comes down to everyone helping each other and not so much looking down at people or thinking, well, that's a musician or that's a DJ or that's a bartender or a cleaner or whatever the case may be. I think you need to just focus on the fact that we're all humans, and the humanity is quite a big thing at the moment. So yeah, it's about helping people struggle. And just to go back to the fund that we have, it is on Facebook, it's on social media, Instagram. There's obviously a bank account, there's bank account details there. So for anyone who is watching this, even if you don't know what Crusaders is, or if you don't know where we are in the world, well, essentially South Africa, just add your R1. Your R1 will make a difference to someone's life. For the time being, obviously nightclubs and the rest of the entertainment industry is closed at the moment. But we can obviously touch on restaurants, for example. they have now gone to a thing where deliveries are a thing. You can obviously collect as well, as we all know, but that's not normal for us. We're used to going to a restaurant, having a dinner, having a nice chow, having a meal, socializing. And if we drift away from restaurants and we go to our industry like bars, sports clubs, whatever you want to refer to it as, it's just not the same. So I think it's going to be interesting to see if we're going to have curfews, because we all hate curfews. As youngsters, we never abided by curfews. The government, unfortunately, cannot ground us. We're already on lockdown for that purpose. So it's quite a difficult one. If you go to nightclubs, I mean, essentially, most people only go to nightclubs at 12 o'clock. So if you had a curfew for 10 o'clock, it just wouldn't work. So I think, just to get to the main answer, I think it's definitely going to change the industry as a whole. In terms of entertainment and hospitality, I think a lot of people are going to have to adapt. I think adapt or die would be a bit strong to use, but I feel like we are going to have to evolve and adapt. I think the main thing, a lot of us wear masks and we sanitize as we go to the shops and as we go, some of us go to work and so forth at the moment. But I think it will really hit home once you actually go to a bar one day and you have to wear a mask. And maybe you approach a bartender and you ask for a drink. Now, the tricky thing comes in here is you're going to have to take your mask down to sip your drink, put your mask back up while you're socializing. When the music's blaring and it's loud, you're now not going to hear your mate next to you. We could barely hear each other before we wore masks. So it's like, I think it's quite amusing to an extent, and it's also going to be very interesting, because imagine being in a nightclub, for example, and there's a song on and you're trying to talk to your mate, but you're wearing a mask. So I think that nightclubs and all of that, it's going to be really interesting to see how you're going to effectively, and excuse my French, but how you're going to jaw with a mask on. That's going to be really interesting. I think it'll also be cool because a lot of people will use it more as a fashion statement. I don't know if you've seen masks have actually evolved. We went from those surgical masks to branded masks, and there's the oxygen masks, and I think it's pretty cool. So I think people are going to use their masks as fashion statements. It's going to be very, very interesting to see. I also just wanted to quickly touch on the particular question. It's changed the industry, and I've actually seen a lot of videos over the weekend with DJs, for example. I can't actually confirm where in Johannesburg, but I saw that there were DJs DJing on the roof of a particular building, and I thought it was absolutely epic. I wish I could actually share the video in this particular interview, but the one artist that stood out to me that I saw on the roof performance was Euphonic, and I mean, he's a well-known brand throughout South Africa, and it was really cool to see a DJ DJing on a roof. And when I say DJing on a roof, there was equipment and the sound and everything was set up, and even though he was alone on that roof, it actually looked like such a jaw. So it's weird that before COVID-19 we didn't think of these ideas, but now because we're forced to do that, it seems, very, very different and interesting. So with bars and so on, I think it's going to be really hectic and really interesting to see what you're going to be drinking out of, for starters, because obviously that has to be monitored. Sanitization and all of that's going to be very hectic, and hygiene is going to be very hectic as well, because what if I go to a bar and I drink from a glass and that goes to the kitchen and then you get a glass? You're going to be thinking, has this been sanitized? Has all the regulations been met? So yeah, not to be even more long-winded about the answer, I think it's going to be very interesting, and I do think it's going to be quite some change for everyone. Without beating around the bush, I think our sector as a whole, entertainment and hospitality, there has obviously been a decrease in everyone's wages. I think that the main reason behind it is evident. There's no business. So essentially, even with, if you go into entertainment with artists and just our industry as a whole, there's just no business. So it's like every business, funds need to come from somewhere. So if your business is closed, it's only normal that funds would obviously be halved. It's very harsh and difficult, as we all obviously need finance and financial backing rather to obviously move forward in life. So I think that this is obviously just another message out there, and it's trying times for everyone. And it just goes back to sort of those who have, try and help those who don't have, because you never know, down the line somewhere, someone who doesn't have now might have more than you have one day, and they'll basically be there to help you out. I'm not essentially saying that that's what you have to do. I mean, it comes down to your own personal preference. If you want to help people out, that's golden. If you don't want to help people out, it's also okay. No one will judge you. I'm not saying that, people have to help one another because some are in a position where they're okay and they can't help or be helped. So, yeah, I think I've definitely noticed that the industry's been cut quite hard, and I do understand why. It's obviously harsh and tough, but I do think that this too shall pass. It's very cheesy to use that term, but it definitely will pass. And I think once everyone's back to normal, well, the new normal, so to speak, I think we'll be thriving again, and everyone will make their way back eventually. This is an interesting one. Consumer demand is going to have quite a, like I say, it's going to be a conflicting interest because people are stuck at home at the moment, and lockdown sort of gets people frustrated to an extent. I think that the demand's going to be high, but I feel like people's pockets is going to be the one that's really going to basically do the talking, essentially, because your demand might be high because you want to be out there, you want to be out and about, you want to be socializing with people, you want to go to the jaw. But I think it might take a little bit of time where people are going to have to obviously buckle down, put their heads down, get back to work, and obviously they're going to have to work towards living the lives that they were living before lockdown and before COVID-19. I feel like one word I can elaborate on that's quite it's quite hectic and it hits home is patience. I think we've been in lockdown for, it's going to be 3 months. For some people it's going to be 4 months. Some of us started before lockdown started. But essentially patience is important because it's the best way to deal with the unknown. Patience also gets collaborated with words like positivity and optimism. Optimism. I got a little bit excited saying optimism there, but the thing is we got to be optimistic and patient as well as excited about what the future holds. There's so much negativity going on in the world, and if I have to teach people of KZN something, rather South Africa, but we'll stick to KZN for now, is patience. We got to just take in what we see. Let's try and not adapt too much to what we see in the news, because the news is educational, but at the same time it can be quite negative upon us, and that's when you get your mind ticking into negative zones where you don't want to be. So you want to try and stay as positive as possible, even if that means exercising more, eating better, speaking to people. I mean, there's so much negativity going on in the world at the moment, and COVID-19 is just like a little cherry on top there that it just can cause a major meltdown. So let's just be patient, let's help one another, let's be there for one another. Even if you're not giving, you don't need to give people like money. You don't have to be able to give someone 1,000 rand, 500 rand. Maybe just give someone support. It doesn't have to be, food, or it doesn't always have to be materialistic things. Maybe give someone out some support, help them through whatever they may be going through. It might not only be something financial or something to do with food, but when I come back to the word patient, I think let's just egg it off with the term of let's wait for this to end, because we all know it's going to end at some point. And if we all stay patient, we can all return to whatever the new normal will be. And let's just hope that we can all just drive on to keep our sanity. And yeah, I feel like we can do that with patience.